Okay, everybody, welcome back to the second session of our In the Beginning class. And in case you don't remember from last time we met, which unfortunately was 3 weeks ago, this is a very text-oriented class. It's hard, right? This is not just hear inspiring stories, but this is actually plowing through text and trying to gain some basic understandings of methodology of the medieval commentators especially, and hopefully appreciate some of the ideas which emerge from their discussions. Now, last time, because it was 3 weeks, we're going to have to do kind of a running start, because I'd be pretty surprised, except for Dwight, who reviewed all the material yesterday. But for most people, most human beings, it's a little tough to remember what we did 3 weeks ago. So we're going to do a quick running start. We'll just do it quickly, but enough to be able to appreciate what we're going to be able to do today. Hopefully, we're going to finish the Ramban's discussion on the introductory material of Chumash Breshit today. That'll be today's assignment. We may even be able to do the next Rashi. We'll see what happens. So we pointed out last week that the first Rashi on the Chumash actually is not at all an attempt at explaining anything about the first verse in the Torah at all. He doesn't discuss the words at all. He just simply begins by quoting a Talmudic teaching, a midrash. And in this midrash, which let's just read it through quickly, so it's on your sources there. It's the very first Rashi, so you can look at the Hebrew, you can take a look at the English. So Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. He just right away quotes a Talmudic source, this midrash that says the following. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Lo hayat tzarich latchil et haTorah ela me'achodesh hazeh lachem. The Torah really should have begun with this passage 12 chapters into the book of Shemot, which is the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people, which is the determination of the Jewish calendar, lunar calendar. That's the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people collectively. That's where the Torah should have begun. Why? As Rashi says, what I just said, Shehi mitzvah rishona shenisvu by Yisrael. It's the first mitzvah which the Jewish people were commanded. Umatam patach b'Breshit. And so why does the Torah begin with Breshit? The whole creation narrative, the stories of the patriarchs, the entire book of Breshit, for God's sake. And how about the first 11 chapters of the book of Exodus? Who needs it? The Midrash says. Well, there's only one reason. And what's that reason? Mishum koch ma'asav higid le'amol latet lem nachlat goyim. He quotes a verse from Psalms that says that the strength of his deeds he has informed his people in order to give to them the inheritance of the nations. Now, what does that mean? As this famous Midrash that Rashi quotes goes on, She'im yomru moto olam l'Yisrael listi matem. If the nations of the world say to the Jewish people in the United Nations, you're a bunch of bandits. Shekavashtem artzot shiva goyim, you conquered the 7 Canaanite nations. Lahem kol ha'aretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, which Adi could have been, he was a candidate, but was passed over, so became the prime minister instead. So the Israeli ambassador will stand up there and say, you claim that we're a bunch of thieves? No. All the earth belongs to the Holy and Blessed be He, who bara'ah, who nitana la'asher yashar beinav. So God created it, and He gave it to whoever is straight in His eyes. Birtzono nitana lehem, birtzono nitala mehem unitalanu. He willed to give it to them at a certain period in history, and He willed to take it from them at a certain period in history and give it to us. And that is our deed of ownership of this parcel of real estate on this planet, according to this midrash here. Fine. Now, what that sounds like, the premises, this is all a review. The premise of this midrash sounds, first of all, just appreciate what this midrash is doing. Rashi is quoting this midrash because he's trying to justify what do we need the entire book of Breshit for? And the answer is pretty astounding. So the answer seems to be premised upon an assumption that really the Torah is a book of, as we pointed out last time, a book of law. So why not just start with the first law? And what's the first law given to the Jewish people? The law is concerning creating a lunar calendar. Okay. What do you know these stories for? It's not a storybook. It's a law book. It's a kind of an ancient Shulchan Aruch, an ancient code of Jewish law. Okay, that seems to be the premise of this midrash. And the answer is, well, it's true that the Torah is a book of law, but we do need a deed of sale because there will come a time when the United Nations will accuse us of being thieves, and we do have to have some way to justify our possession of the Holy Land, and this will be our justification, the fact that God created the world. Fine. Now, that's not one word of Rashi that I just said. That's an ancient midrash. That's 2,000-year-old midrash. Rashi just happens to quote that without comment. But the way we just explained it is the normal way this is understood. Along comes the Ramban, as we saw last time, and says, not that Rashi misunderstood it, because Rashi doesn't say anything. This is just a quote. He says, you probably don't understand this midrash. It's not what you think. And this is very typical of the Ramban's fresh perspective on things. Learning the Ramban is very exciting, and I hope you'll get a taste of how exciting it is. So the Ramban starts out by quoting the Rashi, which is in fact quoting an ancient midrash. And at the very end of the first paragraph, after quoting, it just says, "V'zo agada b'lashon shekatava Rabbeinu Shlomo b'ferushav." This is a Talmudic legend, which in the language that Rabbeinu Shlomo wrote it. Who's Rabbeinu Shlomo? Not Shlomo Rosen, but Rashi, right? This is this Agadah, this midrash, which Rashi quoted b'ferushav in his commentary on the Torah. So then the Ramban comes along and says, "V'yesh li shol ba." He says, wait a second. I don't understand this midrash at all. Because what's the premise of the midrash? The premise of the midrash is, we don't need the entire book of Breshit, of Genesis, and we don't need the first 11 chapters of Shemot. As I pointed out last time, the two themes of creation and the Exodus from Egypt, that's the first chapters of the book of Exodus, those happen to be, if one had to take perhaps the two pillars upon which much of Jewish consciousness, at least in traditional way of viewing things, rests. We make Kiddush and we say Zecher L'Maaseh Breshit, that we're doing this in order to remember creation, and Zecher Litzat Mitzrayim. Those are in memory of the Exodus from Egypt. Those are leitmotifs which repeat themselves over and over again. And this midrash, at first glance, is saying, Maaseh Breshit, fu. Yetziat Mitzrayim, who needs it? That's astounding. So the Ramban says, Kitzorach gadol hu latchilato Reshi bar Elokim. He says, how could the midrash possibly mean that we don't need it because we should just start with the first mitzvah? We need it. And how? Why? Ki hu shorish emunah. It's the very root of faith. V'sheinu ma'amin bazeh v'choshev she'olam kadmon. Someone who doesn't believe God created the world, he thinks the world just somehow has always existed. Hu kofer bi'ikar ve'en lo Torah klal. This is repudiating a very, very basic principle of the Torah, and he doesn't have Torah at all. That's fundamental. The whole edifice of Judaism crumbles if one doesn't believe that God created the world. And we discussed why last time. V'hatshuva. So the Ramban says, well, now that I've piqued your curiosity, I'm going to tell you what the Midrash really meant when it said we really should have dispensed with the whole book of Breshit and the first 11 chapters of Shemot. For the following, what it really means is the following: V'hatshuva mipnei shema'aseh Breshit sod amok eino muvan min hamikrot v'lo yivadal boryo ela mipia kabbalad Moshe Rabbeinu mipia Torah. You know why? Because the Ramban says, I dare you to make sense out of the entire book of Breshit and the first 11 chapters of Shemot. Now, Dr. Koff over here is in shock. He learns these parshot every single year, and they seem to be great stories and beautiful and meaningful. And The Ramban says that, in fact, these narratives are incomprehensible. I am not making up. Eino muvan. How would you say Eino muvan, Adi, in good English?
Could not be understood.
Yes, could not be understood. Or as they say in Carmichael, incomprehensible. Okay, fine. And he and it cannot possibly be understood unless one has access to the Kabbalah, to tradition, not what's written in the verses themselves. He doesn't mean Kabbalah like Gershom Scholem. He means the oral traditions, the lens of exegetical tradition. It can't be understood. The verses don't tell you anything. And as a matter of fact, it's even worse than that. Because those who are privy to that Kabbalah, v'yodav chayavin lastiroto, shouldn't share it. Those who actually do understand these passages based upon tradition, these wisdom teachings, exegetical teachings, interpretive teachings that have been passed down for thousands of years. So if you know them, don't share them. Now here he's certainly alluding to not just the sort of Talmudic teachings, Midrashic teachings, but the Kabbalistic teachings, the more technical meaning of the word Kabbalah, which, of course, from the Ramban perspective, there's no difference between calling Midrashim Kabbalah and calling Kabbalah Kabbalah. It's all part of the interpretive tradition handed down from the very inception of the Torah. That's why the Midrash said that there's really no benefit in having these narratives laid out in the Torah because, in fact, they're incomprehensible. Now, let me just point out, because if you're sort of nonplussed at this idea, there are many religions in the world that have deep reverence for the Hebrew Bible. And of course, they don't look at the Hebrew Bible through the lenses of Jewish tradition, obviously. And they have come up with all kinds of different religions based upon the text of the Bible. In other words, that's the Ramban's point, that the written word as it is, especially dealing with these narratives, which are very strange and difficult to understand. Say later in the Bible, it starts to sound a little bit more real. But when you start to talk about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the flood and the Tower of Babel, these things, these narratives don't necessarily resonate to what appears in the Sacramento Bee. Right? A little divorced from our reality. So if later passages in the Bible, when you look at them per se without interpretive tradition, can be interpreted in just such radically different ways, things which are so obscure, supernatural, very distant from our normal frame of reference, all the more so that by themselves are very difficult to understand. So you might say, well, we do have the interpretive tradition. So everything is fine. You have the written text and the oral law. So he says, you know what, we're better off just giving you the oral law and forget about the written text. This is, there's much to be said about this, right? If we did a little game here, we're all going to be cast off in a desert island, only take one book with you, and you want to make sure you can practice Judaism properly, do not take the Bible. It will lead you astray. That is not a good book to take. You should take Tanya. That's only half tongue-in-cheek. You should take the Talmud or the Shulchan Aruch, I guess. It might be a little boring, but if you want to know about Judaism, don't take the Bible itself because it is not on its own sufficient. Thank you. That's the word I wanted.
14 books of Talmud?
Well, a lot more than that.
60.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like 70
It's okay. A big suitcase.
Okay.
That's okay.
So they have 2 volumes.
והסיפור במה שנברא ביום ראשון מה נעשה ביום השני ושאר ימים באריכות ביצירת אדם וחווה וחטאם ועונשם וסיפור גן עדן וגירוש אדם ממנו כי כל זה לא יובן בינה שלמה מן הכתובים. It's the whole narrative, you name it, from the creation of Adam and Eve, the fact they're being exiled from the Garden of Eden, none of this can be understood by looking at the verses. Hang on 1 second. All the more so the generation of the flood and the dispersion. That's a reference to the Tower of Babel story. Just let me finish the sentence and then there's a comment. There is no great need for them because they're inexplicable and incomprehensible. You want to be a good Jew? You don't need these stories. So how are you going to be a good Jew? I'll tell you how. 10 Commandments. That's it. Take the 10 Commandments. You're on firm footing. You want to be a good Jew? The 10 Commandments. And you'll know not only how to live as a Jew, the fundamental principles of morality, both the way we relate to God and the way we relate to other human beings, but we will know even Jewish theology, as it says in the Big Ten. You don't need the creation story. It says right in the 10 Commandments that 6 days God created the heaven and earth. So you don't need the whole narrative of the creation story. You just need the 10 Commandments. Got everything in there. And the esoteric, deep knowledge which is conveyed by those otherwise cryptic narratives that are throughout Breshit and the beginning of Shemot, that will remain for whom? As he says, leyichidim. For those elite possessors of the tradition, like those in this room. You are truly among the elite in many ways. Okay, so this is the Ramban. This is just a review of what we did last time. This is the Ramban's rereading of what the Midrash's question was. Why do we need all that material? After all, it's incomprehensible. And if you want to live as a Jew and believe as a Jew, it's enough to have the 10 Commandments and what comes after that. Okay, so far so good. That's all a review. Now, what we're going to do today is try to understand the answer that the Midrash gives. So why do we need those stories if they're incomprehensible and don't really tell us any comprehensible way how to believe and live as a Jew? We're going to find out in just a minute. But I believe that Duvid had a question over there. Not anymore. Anybody have any questions or comments? How about stomachache, anybody? Okay, anybody sleepy?
So Moshe took the right book?
I'm sorry?
Moshe took the right book?
Tanya.
The
On his
tablet?
desert island?
Yeah, the tablet.
Yeah, the tablets, yeah. But he got everything. Okay, l'chaim. I didn't know you were funny. That was good. That was
He needed a
good.
few aspirins as well.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay. Now everybody take a deep breath and put in your seatbelts. Now we're going to try to understand the Ramban's reading on why we need it. Now remember what the Midrash sounds like. It sounds like the answer is, it's true. It doesn't teach us any theology. And we'll use the Ramban's approach. And it doesn't teach us how to live as a Jew. But I'll tell you one thing it does. It's very good for the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. So he can get up there and pound his chest and say, what are you complaining about? It's ours. And you see, here's the bill of sale right here. Okay, fine. Tell you the truth, that's a little weird. With all due respect, I happen to be a big believer in the Jewish people's right to the land of Israel. But to say that the entire book of Genesis and much of the book of Exodus is in order that we can justify our presence in the land of Israel, that's a little hard to say unless you are a Zionist on steroids. I mean, like the only thing you can think about is Zionism and justifying Zionism and fighting off all the enemies of Israel, BDS, etc. If that's everything you think about, I guess this would make sense. But it's a little hard to justify in the broad expanse of Jewish tradition. L'chaim, everybody. Okay, let's hear what, according to Ramban, the Midrash is saying. And this is going to be very important. V'natan Rabbi Yitzhak tam lezeh. So Rabbi Yitzhak, not Rabbi, right? The Midrash, right? Gave an answer. Ki hitchila hatov b'Bereshit bara Elokim v'sipor kol inyan hayitzira ad briat adam. So the Torah begins with the story of creation and the narrative of the creation until the creation of the first human being. V'shehim shilo b'ma'aseh yadav, that God entrusted all of creation into the hands of this human being. He became in modern Hebrew we say a moshel. A moshel is like a governor. Okay. V'kol shat tachat raglav, and God placed everything under his feet. He's the boss man. This is all yours. He put this human being in this very wonderful Gan Eden, gave him the keys. It's all yours. Look at the fruit. Amazing. It's almost good as like the selling Rayleighs. Okay? V'gan Eden shehu mivchar hamekomot anivraim ba'olam hazeh na'aseh machon l'shivto. As I just said, the Garden of Eden, which is the most choice of places that were created in the earth, is his abode. Machon l'shivto. Ad shegiresh oto cheto misham. Until his sin caused him to be expelled from there. Of course, who's the he? Adam. And what was his sin? He broke his diet. Listening to his wife. Okay. I want to remind everybody that this is recorded for posterity, and spouses, significant others, and daughters can hear this. Okay. So okay, fine. Now let's go on. The anshe dur hamabul bechetam gurshu min haolam kulo. And then you had the generation of the flood. They were also Gorshu. Now, I want you to notice, for the Hebrew scholars here, that there's a word which the Ramban is using. He's already cited two stages in human history. Adam, right? That's the first guy. And then the Dor Mabul, that's the difference of the flood. And he uses a verb in regards to both. What's that Hebrew verb? Legaresh, to expel. Okay? So the Dor Mabul, he sees that as a kind of been there, done it, as it were, of what happened in Gan Eden. But this time they're expelled from the planet. From life. Okay? But it's fascinating, and you'll see what the Ramban is trying to do here. Because he just said God killed them. But he doesn't say God wiped them out in the flood. He says they were expelled because he wants to see this as a repetition of what you will see will become a leitmotif, which resonates throughout the entire Tanakh and Jewish history, and actually world history. So let's go on. V'hatzadik behem levado nimlat hu uvanav. And the tzaddik among them, so he alone escaped. Who's he? Noah. And I used to really like the Bill Cosby routine, which I don't like anymore, because I don't like Bill Cosby anymore. V'zaram chetam garam lehem lafafitzam b'mekomot. And their progeny, the progeny of Noah and sons, okay? So their sin, garam lehem lafafitzam b'mekomot, to scatter them to different places, v'lizrotam ba'aratzot, and to scatter them in the different lands. Now, who's that a reference to? Okay, good, but even more, because what's the next major narrative in the Torah? The Tower of Babel. And what happens there? It's a very cohesive, coherent, industrial effort there. And they sin, and whatever the sin is not important for our purposes right now. And what's the result? Gerush. They're exiled, they're scattered. And they occupied for themselves at different places according to their families and according to their nations as it happened to play itself out for them. Okay, fine. So now he says, in case you didn't catch my drift, the Ramban says, I'll make it clear. He says, Im Kain, therefore, Ra'uihu, Kasher Yosif Hagoy Lachto, that any nation, it's fit. This is the way God created the world. That any nation that sins, sheyabed mimkomo, he'll become lost from its place. V'yavo goy acher lareshet et artzo, and another goy will come. Another nation will come and inherit that place. Ki chen hu mishpat ha'elohim ba'aretz me'olam. For that is the divine operating principle. This is the kind of, you could use even a lot anachronistically, kind of the Hegelian pattern of historical development. History is not random. History behaves according to certain divinely imposed rules. And that is that we occupy certain real estate, and when we misbehave, we lose that real estate. That is the way of the world. Let's read on just a little bit, and then we'll talk about this, because it's a very profound idea. All the more so in the case of our specific history, because the Canaanites were particularly sinful. Okay, and it's unfit that Canaan should inherit the most choice real estate in this entire planet. And in case you thought that was Bel Air, okay, it's not. And it's not even San Diego. Okay, it's the Holy Land. So said the Ramban. And he even went to live there. So now the principle is, you're no good, you go into exile. Somebody else comes and lives there. In this particular case, Canaan, exit stage left. This is, by the way, explicit in the stage, right? This is explicit in the Torah, where the Torah says, you can't inherit the land yet because the sin of the Canaanites hasn't reached its full measure. Right? I can't kick them out. I don't kick out anybody. It's not the way the world operates. You have to forfeit your right to be landed. Okay. Kinyan shekatuv yitain lehem artzot goyim va'amal le'umim yirshu ba'avor yishmu chukav v'torotav yinsoru. So then he quotes a pasuk from Tehillim, from Psalms, that says that God gave them the lands of the nations. By the way, it's very interesting to note. You see, according to this, the Torah has no shame. It's not embarrassed at all to say that, in fact, we took the land of the Canaanites. The Torah says explicitly, you get houses you didn't build. You get fields that you didn't plant. Right? The Amalu Umim Yershu, they will inherit, the Jewish people, Amalu Umim. I need some Hebrew scholars here. What's Amal mean? Work. The work of the nations, they will inherit, the Jewish people. They did the work, we get the house. Okay, that's a pretty good deal for us. But then the second half, it's conditional. Im yishma'u chukav, or ba'avor, in order that the Jewish people observe his laws, the Torotav yinsoru, and they guard his instructions. Klomar, shegeresh misham mordav, that God expels those who rebel against him, vishkin bo ovadav, and he places there those who serve him. Sheyedu, and here's the punchline. This is put on your refrigerator door. Sheyedu, that they should know. Ki ba'avodata yinchaluha, that only by worshiping God do they inherit it. Who's they should know? Who's the they? The Jewish people. The Jewish people. You see how he's flipping this midrash on its head in terms of what we thought. We thought that this midrash is a speech that was designed for the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations to get up in front of the UN and proclaim like this: we are the king of the mountain and it's ours because, and here's the bill of sale. Along comes the Ramban, says the entire first book of the Torah and much of the second book of the Torah is in order to teach you something really fundamental. You know, you're there now. It's not a message for the non-Jews. It's a message for us. That Only by worshiping God, by serving God, do they inherit the land. V'im yechetahu lo, and if the Jewish people were to sin against God, you know what's going to happen? Taki otam haaretz. The land will vomit them out. Kasher katagoy asher lifnehem. Just like the land vomited out the nation that was there before them. This is the Ramban's understanding of this midrash. It is much more addressing the Jewish people than it is addressing the nations of the world. It's not some type of chauvinistic claim that we are the master race. God forbid to use that expression. That's a very inappropriate expression to use reference to the Jewish people, and it is ours. And don't you think otherwise? No, it's God's. And guess what? Nobody has an irrevocable right to the land. Everything is, who said conditional? Is my father? Yes. Everything is conditional. Everything is conditional. And it's conditional upon doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now, I just want to take a step back because, take a look at the Tanakh. Take a look at Jewish history. Jewish history is a ongoing rhythm of in and out. That's exactly right, just like the burgers. Okay? That exile, right, of being in the land, let's just call it redemption, dispersion, and exile. Redemption, dispersion, exile, redemption, dispersion, exile. That is the rhythm of Jewish history. From the Ramban's point of view, it's the rhythm of all history. It's the defining theme. And the Torah wants to create that defining theme from the outset. Now, I'm not sure we really appreciate how horrendous this is. I can imagine a lot of people thinking, you know what? Because we live in such a mobile, transient society, right? The idea of, a group in Sacramento, we're going to go live in New York or France, all right? Or whatever. Like, it's like people are extremely mobile and not very rooted. Now, and we somehow don't think of that as being a terribly terrible thing. The fact that we're not particularly rooted. The reason that we don't think of that as being a particular thing are two, I believe, at least two, and you can help me out here. One of them is we're not agricultural. So if you lived in an agricultural society, your rootedness to a piece of real estate is of profound significance. That's number one. Anybody a farmer? Exactly. Okay. Okay.
But even, just to cook a little bit, only.
Let me finish do the second point. Let me just get it on the table, and then you can quibble all you want to. You can even nibble if you want to. So the second point that I want to get to is, let me put the second point on the table. The second point is that we live now, we, the people in this room, live in a slice of the world which is relatively safe and secure, despite what you read in the newspaper and et cetera. Bad things happen, but you have to realize what life was like not too long ago. You don't have to go back to Talmudic times, but in Talmudic times, just to give you an example, you know that there's a blessing you make. It's called Tfilat HaDerech, the prayer when you travel. If you take a look at the words of that prayer, the assumption is the moment you step outside of your walled city, you are profoundly vulnerable. You are insecure big time. Now, you see, when you move from Carmichael to New York, right, no one thinks, oh my gosh, how can I leave the walled city of Carmichael? I mean, I'm going to be attacked by lions, tigers, and bears and in human form. Okay? Gated community, walk outside, that's the end of it. Because we have the European Union, say no to Brexit. Okay? Because we have these kind of political orders. Now, we live with this kind of luxury that's very limited in time. we're very blessed. That lets us feel safe while being mobile. But you don't have to go back very many years. How about the Holocaust? Just to take a very dramatic example, and that's not very long ago, in which to not have a home is a profound existential threat on the most primal level in terms of your physical existence and on a psychic level, to be a person without a home, to be not rooted. That's why, God has all kinds of ways of punishing us. He could give us a patch, right? Could put, there's all kinds of things. He could, a monetary fine. You Jewish people, you have abandoned the ways of the Lord. That'll cost you $10,000. Write a check. Okay, so no, exile. Exile is a profoundly primal uprooting, literally, of the human psyche and of human security. Gush Katif, how profound of a trauma that was. And this is the theme of Tanakh, and it's the theme of of Jewish history, and you see it starting from Adam, exile. That's Galut in the garden. Yes, Mark.
You overemphasize mobility. I can't be.
Yeah, Jesse, you got to speak out.
Overemphasize the mobility of populations. May hold true for the United States.
Yeah.
To some extent, Europe.
That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point.
Most people in the world,
right. This would be traumatic.
Is either to a nearby urban area, and if it's voluntary, but most of the mobility right now is war and pestilence. Exactly.
That's my point. That's exactly what I tried to say. In other words, I'm trying to explain why we don't get particularly impressed or excited by this notion of exile. Like, in a certain sense, we engage in auto exile. We move all the time to different places for all kinds of different reasons. We don't feel like we're being exiled. I just wanted to explain why we don't feel that way, and that's exactly the point. Because we live in a very peculiar and particular historical little blessed window, and who knows how long it's going to last. But we live in a very blessed time. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Except if you live in Syria.
Exactly. That's Mark's point. That none of us live in Syria right now. So, but if you live in Syria, you do appreciate what a profound threat that is to go into exile. And of course, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, they can't stay and they can't leave. So that's a different. Yeah. Any other comments or questions on anything we said so far? Yes, sir.
I wonder why he used a term in sorrow after Torotav in sorrow. Why did he use that term?
Yeah, because it happens to be the verse in Psalms. It's just a verse. But you could ask the same question. Why did the author of that particular psalm?
Why he used the sorrow?
Yeah. So
Sorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's in Psalm number 105. Now, the truth of the matter is, I could give you a literary answer, and that is, it's typical poetry, because it says, "Ba'avur yishmeru chukav v'torotav yinsoru." So that's called chiastic parallelism, ABBA, right? So yishmoru and yinsoru are parallel, and chukav and torotav are parallels. It's ABBA. Yeah.
But the term yinsoru was a very
Yeah.
one.
Go ahead. You must. I see. There's a thought lurking in your cranium. What do you have in mind?
Do you remember the term netzer? What does that mean?
Yeah, someone who is like. Yeah,
It's
very good.
The progeny.
Yeah.
The progeny is netzer.
Oh, you're saying there's like a double entendre here.
Yeah.
That continuity throughout generations
That's
is
exactly
only
it.
through Nitzirah in the sense of guarding.
Uh-huh.
That is beautiful.
That's like
That's really nice. That's beautiful. That really is good. Okay, wow. I love that. Thank you. There's an expression, Ein Beit Midrash Bli Chidush. When you get together to study Torah, there's always going to be a novel suggesting a new thought. I like that very much. Okay, let's now finish off this Ramban. Now, what we're going to do in the next 5 minutes is going to be an exercise in frustration. So I always like to have a sort of Socratic method of teaching and ask questions and hear what people have to say. And I even respect what you have to say most of the time. So but when I ask a question, a lot of times it's rhetorical. Like I have a certain idea, ask a question, but I'm very open to a different answer if it makes any sense to me. But here I'm telling you right away, I'm going to ask you a question. I have no idea what the answer is. The Ramban now goes on and he says something. This is very good methodology in terms of studying classical Jewish text. You know that many of these traditions, these Talmudic traditions, appear in slightly different versions throughout different books of rabbinic literature. So you could have a teaching that's in the Talmud. It'll also appear in 3 different collections of Midrashim, but with slight differences. And sometimes the differences can make a difference. Okay? So the Ramban is going to say, and I'll show you that the way I read this Midrash is the right way. I can prove that to you because I'm going to cite you the same basic teaching, but in a slightly different form that I found, the Ramban says, in a different collection. Okay? The problem is, I've read this version that he's going to show you of the Midrash a whole bunch of times. I cannot figure out why he quotes it. I don't hear it saying anything different or any nuances. I'm completely mystified. This is not pretend. So we're going to read it together. And you're going to tell me why the Ramban chose to quote the second version of the Midrash, and he thinks it supports his reading of the Midrash. And because we only have a few minutes, I'll tell you what I want to do. Let me just read it in English. Does anybody have the English there I could use? And we'll just to make this fast. Okay, everybody ready? So the Ramban says the following. And in order to elucidate the commentary that I have written above, here is the sage's language in Breshit Rabbah, who stated in the following language. Now, what you really have to do this right, we're going to read through the second Midrash. You have to remember the first version, the Rabbi Yitzchak. Remember what Rabbi Yitzchak said the first one? Now, this is going to be Rabbi Yoshua of Sachnin. He was on the Arab soccer team in Sachnin. Okay. Rabbi Yoshua of Sachnin opened in the name of Rabbi Levi. The strength of his actions, he told his people. Koach ma'asav yigid le'am. What is the reason that the Holy and Blessed be He revealed to Israel what he created on the first day, what he created on the second day? Who needs it? Because of the 7 Canaanite nations, so that they should not designate Israel and say to them, are you not a nation of looting? And Israel will respond to them, and you, is the land not looted in your hands? Is it not written in Deuteronomy, the Kaftorim that came out of Kaftor destroyed them and dwelt in their place? You know, the Torah describes how one nation came, kicked out another one, and then somebody else took it, then somebody else took it. The world and its fullness belonged to the Holy and Blessed be He. When he wanted, he gave it to you. When he wanted it, he took it from you and gave it to us. That is what is written in Psalms, again, from the same verse quoted above. Why did God tell the strength of his actions? Answer, to give them the inheritance of the peoples. And so it is stated in the first part of the verse, the strength of his actions he told his people. This means in order to give them the inheritance of the nations, he told them about the beginning. And the matter that I mentioned has already come from another source. Oh, let's pause there. The last thing is another point. Okay. I'm a little mystified. Does anybody see anything new or any change in this? I mean, there's a different author. It's not Rabbi Yitzchak, it's Rabbi Yoshua of Sachnin. It sounds very much like the first version. I don't really know what's different about this, though an idea just popped into my brain. But I'll save it because I'd like to hear what you have to say.
It's just another way of giving context to the whole story.
But how does this version of the Midrash support the Ramban's understanding of it? That really the entire point of the book of Genesis and some of the book of Exodus is to teach about possession, sin, exile, and that repetitive theme. So you're saying it's just another source which supports that. But And maybe it is. Maybe it's just another teaching that says the same thing. I thought he was quoting it because it's so similar to the first, but with certain nuances of difference that support the Ramban's reading. And I do think I have an idea, but anybody else?
It's kind of like showing us who created all of this. Since it says he has the right to give it to
I saw that in the first midrash.
him. Yeah.
I said, what's new here?
Well, one thing when I do behavioral interviewing, I try to look at people's past actions to predict their future actions. So when it says, he told them about the beginning, what happened in the past, so they can predict what will happen in the future.
So do you see this more in this version than in the first version? See, did everybody understand my problem?
Yeah, I
Yes,
don't see-
Dwight, I don't see it, yeah.
Well, there's one difference.
Yeah.
This one, I think, explicitly accuses the Canaanites of also having looted. In other words, they lost, and that's the reason that they lost it.
Nice.
And the previous one
Nice,
doesn't. It doesn't state that. It
Nice.
just says,
Nice.
I gave,
Right.
just as
That's
God
nice.
gave it to you.
Right.
And it's his. It's all his, and he can do what he
Right.
wants. And this one says.
that this is a pattern that operates in the laws of history, not just to the Jewish people, to everybody. That this is the nature of this kind of law of history, that you live in a place, you don't do what God wants you to do, and God has a plan for every nation. So even the Kafturim are supposed to be doing something, mostly making buttons. And they, that's a joke and they're kicked out, and then somebody else comes and lives in their place. That's a very nice idea.
It's interesting.
As a matter of fact, I'm convinced that's
the
good.
use of the word, looters, So we have the word
Bless you.
on the first Rabbi Yitzchak, kilistim atem.
Yeah.
You are robbers or
Yeah. Here's the word,
pirates.
Hebrew word bozazim.
Yeah, which is a Greek word. Listos
Right.
is a robber or a
Right.
pirate.
This is a more Hebraic version of that same idea. It
Right.
uses
And
the
it's
Hebrew term.
both plural and singular.
Yeah. So I like, actually, I'm very convinced that Dwight's, that's very good. I think that's
not
good.
Your idea too, right?
No.
Oh,
I had a different idea, but it maybe it complements your idea.
do it fast.
And,
I'm sorry, I got to leave it.
and I'll do it quickly. So, but did everyone understand what Dwight just said? Because this makes it says, wait a second, your accusation against us, it's not that, but you guys did it too, right? That's not what it's saying. It's saying that this is a pattern in human history. Okay, but I want to add one more thing. You know what's lacking here? It says, why do we need the first day of creation, the second day of creation? The first midrash said, why didn't God just start with the first commandment of lunar calendar? That's absent completely in this version. So because the way the first midrash formulated, like, why do we need all these stories for? It's enough just to give us the first mitzvah. It sounds like the premise is, but the Torah is just a law book. And so that's the way we read it for first time. And so what do we need the stories for? Based upon this version, you wouldn't think the Torah is just a law book, so it's just being with the first law. It doesn't appear there at all. It says, I just don't know what these narratives are about. Answer, it's there to teach you this message of exile and redemption. So I think that the two ideas are complementary. So we'll stop here, and we'll go on. And I'm not leaving. We'll take your questions next time, but I want it for the people who are on air. So we'll say goodbye, and we'll continue Bezrat Hashem